Do you remember the show that Nickelodeon doesn't? I don't mean some pilot that never aired or a forgotten cartoon that got canceled after one season. I mean a show that was scrubbed out of existence like it was never supposed to be there in the first place. Ask your friends, search the forums, dig through the archives. You won't find it. But I did, and I wish I hadn't. The first time I saw it, I thought I was losing my mind. It wasn't just the tape itself, an unmarked VHS with a fading orange sticker, but the way it sounded before I even hit play. I swear I could hear faint static leaking from it, like the tape wanted to run on its own, somewhere between a laugh track and a scream. It sat in my hands, humming with a weight that didn't belong to cheap plastic. I should have thrown it out. I should have snapped it in half and buried it in the trash. But curiosity has teeth, and mine sank deep. When I pressed play, the screen filled with static, the kind that crawls across your skin. For a moment I thought it was broken, just another useless thrift store find. But then, beneath the fuzz, came the faint echo of music I almost recognized. A jingle twisted into something unfamiliar, like hearing a childhood melody played on broken instruments. It was Nickelodeon, but not. I leaned closer. At first, the picture wouldn't sharpen, no matter how I adjusted the tracking. Faces flickered through the snow, kids maybe 10 or 11 years old, their outlines jerking in and out of focus. The longer I stared, the more certain I became that they could see me. Not in that cheap TV show way where an actor looks down the lens for a punchline. No, this was eye contact. Heavy, deliberate, suffocating. I don't know if you've ever felt a television look back at you, but I wouldn't recommend it. And then came the laughter. Too loud, too long, with no pauses for jokes. It sounded pre-recorded, sure, but distorted, as if someone had stretched the tape thin and forced the voices into shapes they were never meant to take. I turned down the volume, but it didn't help. The laughter crawled out of the speakers and burrowed under my skin. That's when I realized this wasn't some random tape. It was an episode from a show that shouldn't exist. A Nickelodeon show. One I'd never seen, never heard of, and yet something about it clung to the edges of memory. Like a name you almost recall but can't pronounce. I want to tell you more. I need to. But I should warn you, what I saw didn't just haunt me, it changed me. Even now, pieces of it slip into my dreams. Sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, I can hear the static again. And every time, I wonder if watching was the mistake, or if telling you now is. Because if I stop talking about it, I disappear. And if you stop listening, you will too. I grew up on Nickelodeon. Back then, it wasn't just a channel, it was a world. A sticky, fluorescent-colored escape where the worst thing that could happen was getting slimed or embarrassed in front of a laughing studio audience. I remember plopping down in front of the TV with a bowl of cereal, sticky sugar milk dripping down my fingers, while the orange Splat logo bounced across the screen. It felt safe, familiar, like Nickelodeon was raising me as much as my parents were. Shows like Double Dare, Legends of the Hidden Temple, Keenan and Kel, they were part of the rhythm of being a kid. If you were homesick, Nickelodeon was there. If you were up too late, Nickelodeon whispered jokes in the dark. It had this weird magic where everything was just a little goofy, a little rebellious, but never dangerous. Never wrong. But nestled somewhere in those memories, there's something else. Something that doesn't belong. It started like a splinter, an itch in the back of my head whenever I thought about those years. I'd remember an afternoon of shows and then this gap, a place where something lived, something I couldn't quite name. At first I thought I was misremembering. Childhood memories are messy after all. But then I'd dream about it. In the dream, the set looked like a clubhouse, not the polished, colorful ones you saw in every Nickelodeon sitcom, but smaller, cramped. The walls looked unfinished, like plywood nailed together in a rush. There were kids, 3, 4. Their faces blur if I try too hard, but I can still see their eyes. They weren't acting like kids on TV. They weren't smiling or mugging for the camera. They looked tired, scared even. When I woke up from those dreams, I'd try to match the memory to an actual show. Maybe it was an old episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Maybe some forgotten sketch buried inside all that, but it never lined up. And the more I tried to place it, the more convinced I became that it wasn't just a dream. There were these little tells that gave it away. I'd remember the laugh track, except it didn't sound like the bright, cartoony Nickelodeon laughter. It was deeper, slower, like a crowd being forced to laugh on command. I'd remember the theme song, only a few notes. But instead of the upbeat jingles Nickelodeon was known for, it was more like a lullaby, slightly out of tune. And worst of all, I remembered the kids' names. Just flashes of syllables. Tori, Ben, Kyle. I tried looking them up, searching old cast lists and IMDb pages, but those names never appeared in any Nickelodeon lineup. It was like they'd been erased. The strange thing is, even when I thought about it as an adult, part of me still lit up with that Nickelodeon nostalgia. The colors, the slime, the jingles. They were a mask, hiding whatever this other thing was. And that's what makes it so terrifying. Nickelodeon was supposed to be safe, right? It was supposed to be for kids. It was supposed to be fun. That's the contrast that unsettled me the most. Bright orange logos, squeaky clean kids, goofy sitcom antics, and then this other show bleeding through the cracks like a stain no one wanted to admit was there. It makes me wonder now, how many other kids saw it? How many of us caught glimpses of this forgotten show wedged between reruns of Clarissa Explains It All and Rugrats and just dismissed it as a weird dream later? Maybe that's why so few people talk about it. Because once you start pulling at that splinter, it doesn't stop. I still remember one specific afternoon. I was maybe 9. I came home from school, backpack half zipped, crumbs of crushed granola bars littering the bottom. I flipped on Nickelodeon like I always did. There was a rerun of Hey Arnold playing, and I sat there half watching, half dozing. When the episode ended, instead of commercials, the screen just glitched, a jump cut. Suddenly, there was that other set again. The cramped clubhouse. The kids staring into the camera like they wanted help but couldn't say the words. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and by the time I focused again, it was back to normal. A loud, cheery commercial for GAC was playing, slime pouring over smiling kids who looked nothing like the ones I'd just seen. I told myself I'd imagined it. Kids do that, right? We make things up. But part of me knew it wasn't imagination or a dream. It was something Nickelodeon never wanted us to see. Something they buried so deep it only survived in half-broken memories and eventually the tape I found years later. And if you think I'm exaggerating, if you think I'm just mixing up shows or remembering wrong, I envy you. Because once you realize the gap is there, once you acknowledge the missing piece, you can't unsee it. You'll start looking too, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find it. I didn't stumble onto the tape right away. For years, the show lived only in the corners of memory, the kind of thing you try to explain to friends at 2 in the morning when everyone's half asleep. Do you remember that weird show on Nickelodeon, the one with the kids in the clubhouse? They'd shake their heads, laugh, and tell me I must have dreamt it, and I believed them, for a while. But memory has a way of nagging at you. It whispers when you least expect it. I'd be flipping through channels late at night, see an old rerun of Keenan and Kel, and suddenly the laughter track would feel wrong. Or I'd be browsing some thrift store, surrounded by the musty smell of forgotten toys and clothes, and I'd half expect to see those blurred faces staring at me from a dusty TV screen. The day I actually found it, I wasn't looking for anything special. Just killing time in a second-hand shop tucked between a shuttered laundromat and a pawn shop. The kind of place where fluorescent lights buzz overhead, and every aisle feels like it's sagging under the weight of junk nobody wants. I was flipping through the VHS bin, a graveyard of outdated workout tapes, forgotten rom-coms, and home-recorded family events labeled in Sharpie. That's when I saw it. It was sitting at the very bottom, half buried under a copy of The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. No case, just a scuffed black tape with a crooked orange sticker slapped on its side. The sticker had no title, no date, just one word written in smudged pen, Clubhouse. My first thought was, no way. My second thought was, I have to buy this. I turned it over in my hands. The plastic felt heavier than it should have, like something was rattling inside. I brought it up to the counter. The clerk barely glanced at it, rang me up for 50 cents, and slid it into a crinkled paper bag. I walked out with my heart pounding harder than it should have for a thrift store find. At home, I set the tape on the coffee table and just stared at it. Funny, isn't it? I'd spent years wishing I could prove that show existed, and when the proof was finally in front of me, I couldn't bring myself to touch it. The room felt colder with it sitting there, like it was waiting. I told myself I'd watch it later, but later kept turning into later until 3 days passed and I was still pretending I didn't care. Then one night, the power flickered in my apartment. Just for a second, long enough to plunge me into darkness, long enough for the hum of the refrigerator to die and the silence to stretch. When the lights came back, I looked at the tape and swore the sticker had shifted, as though the word Clubhouse had been written fresh. That broke me. I dug out the old VCR I hadn't touched in years, wiped the dust off, and set it up. The machine clunked to life, groaning like it hadn't been used since the 90s. I picked up the tape. The edges were grimy, the sticker peeling, but as I slid it into the machine, it fit too smoothly, like it belonged there, like it had been waiting for this exact moment. The screen flickered to life. First just black, then a burst of static, the kind that hisses and pops like it's alive. For a few seconds I thought the tape was dead, a waste of 50 cents. But then the static began to shift, pulling into lines, forming shapes, the Nickelodeon logo. Not the modern version, not even the sleek ones from the early 2000s. This was the Splat logo, bright orange, cheerful, nostalgic. My chest tightened. It felt almost comforting, almost, but the sound ruined it. Instead of the usual upbeat theme music, there was this low, warped hum like someone trying to play a jingle underwater. The logo hung on screen too long, stretching, twitching until the edges began to pixelate. And then it cut. The screen went black for a heartbeat. When the picture came back, I was looking at a set I recognized and didn't. Wooden walls, a table with scattered board games, a half-broken lamp in the corner. The Clubhouse. My throat went dry. It was real. The camera was shaky, handheld, not the polished, multi-angle setup Nickelodeon always used. It gave the whole scene the wrong kind of intimacy, like watching a home movie filmed by someone who shouldn't have been there. 3 kids sat at the table. A boy with messy blonde hair, a girl with a striped shirt, another boy, smaller, looking nervous. Their names teetered on the edge of memory, but I couldn't grab them. They didn't smile at the camera. They didn't wave, they just stared. And then, after what felt like forever, the laugh track kicked in. Loud, sudden, jarring. The kids didn't laugh. The laugh track played anyway. I froze, remote in hand, finger hovering over the stop button. Every part of me screamed to eject the tape, toss it out the window, burn it. But my thumb wouldn't press down. I had been waiting my whole life for this. And deep down, I think the tape had been waiting for me too. At first, it really did look like a kid's show, or at least the skeleton of one. The three kids in the clubhouse shuffled cards at the table, muttering lines that were supposed to be jokes. Something about sneaking candy past their parents. Something about pulling a prank at school. I don't remember the punchlines, but I remember how long the silences dragged before the laugh track filled them in. That laugh track never fit. It didn't bubble with joy like Nickelodeon's usual canned laughter. It was too loud, too distorted, pitched slightly lower than it should have been. I thought of a choir being forced to laugh on command, their voices echoing in some cavernous studio. Worse, it never stopped on time. Every gag ended with laughter that went on just a little too long, until it overlapped with the next line. The kids didn't join in. They didn't smile. I leaned forward, squinting. Their faces weren't bright and exaggerated like TV actors. They looked tired, pale. The boy with the messy blonde hair fumbled his line, staring at the floor as though reading from something we couldn't see. The girl in the striped shirt tried to giggle, but the sound cracked halfway through like she hadn't spoken in days. The smaller boy said nothing at all. He just sat with his hands in his lap, eyes fixed on the camera, pleading. Something in my chest tightened. This wasn't performance. This was survival. The camera cut clumsily, jumping to a close-up of the girl. She said something about sneaking cookies, but the audio was wrong. Her lips moved half a second before the sound came out. Then the laugh track thundered, drowning her out. The camera stayed too long on her face. I saw her glance to the side, eyes darting toward someone or something just off camera. She whispered something under her breath. The mic picked it up even under the laugh track. Please don't make me do this again. My stomach lurched. I rewound, played it again, pressing the volume higher. Her voice cracked with exhaustion. That wasn't a line. That wasn't acting. The screen cut again, this time to the clubhouse door creaking open. A shadow passed across the frame, but the camera never showed who or what entered. The kid stiffened. The boy with blonde hair sat up straighter, forcing a brittle smile. He said, "Guess it's time for the game." His voice wavered, and the laugh track roared approval. The game was hide and seek. At least that's what they called it. The kids scattered, running through the set that suddenly looked larger, more labyrinthine than before. The walls stretched higher, the corners darker. It wasn't the bright, colorful Nickelodeon clubhouse anymore. It was some unfinished space. Plywood walls lit by bare bulbs, hallways that didn't end. The camera followed the smaller boy, the nervous one. He ducked behind a wooden crate, curling himself into the shadows. The laugh track fell silent. For the first time, the tape was quiet. The boy covered his mouth with both hands, his breathing sharp and panicked. Then came the footsteps. Heavy, slow, too loud for a child. They echoed through the set, reverberating like the walls were hollow. The boy whimpered. I felt my own throat tighten, as if I shouldn't be watching this, as if watching made me complicit. The camera panned too quickly, blurring, and then cut back to the clubhouse table. The other two kids were sitting there again, calm, playing cards like nothing had happened. The smaller boy was gone. No mention of him. No empty chair. Just two kids where three had been. I blinked, rewound the tape, tried to find the moment where the boy disappeared. Every time I watched it back, he vanished earlier. First, it was after the footsteps, then after the crate, then gone completely, as though he'd never been there at all. By the third rewind, the episode only had 2 kids. I grabbed my phone, fumbling to record the screen, but the camera app froze, black. When I checked the gallery later, every clip I'd tried to save was corrupted, just static and warped audio, like laughter stretched into eternity on screen. The girl and the blonde boy carried on, their dialogue stilted, broken. The laugh track swelled and cut at random, sometimes blaring over nothing at all. The blonde boy began to cry mid-sentence, tears streaking down his face, but his voice didn't break character. He just kept reciting lines, each word trembling. The girl reached for his hand. For a second, it looked like they might break, like the mask would fall away. But then the screen glitched. Static tore across the frame, erasing the moment. When the picture returned, they were both smiling. Plastic, stretched smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Something pressed against me then, an instinct I can't explain, the kind of primal warning that makes your skin crawl. I wanted to stop the tape. My body screamed at me to stop, but my hand wouldn't move. I realized I wasn't breathing. The episode dragged on in this warped loop. Jokes that weren't jokes, laughter that wasn't laughter, faces that weren't faces anymore. The set bent around them, the walls darker with each cut, and I understood. This wasn't a show. It was a ritual. I finally slammed the stop button, the VCR clunking as if it resisted me. The screen went black. I sat frozen, heart hammering, sweat slick on my palms. The silence in the room was deafening, but what chilled me most was the memory. I remembered all 3 kids clearly, the boy, the girl, the small one who'd hidden. Yet when I closed my eyes, I couldn't recall his name, not even a syllable. It was as though the tape had reached into my head and erased it, and I knew I hadn't seen the worst yet. I couldn't shake it. Even after I forced myself to eject the tape, the image of that small boy hiding behind the crate stayed with me. His wide eyes, his trembling hands, etched into my brain like scars. I knew his face, knew the way his hair stuck to his forehead with sweat, but his name was gone. Not forgotten in the way you lose a detail and then suddenly remember it again. No, this was different. It was like the name had never existed at all, like someone had scrubbed it clean out of the world. I told myself I'd imagined it, that maybe there had only ever been 2 kids. But the more I replayed the scene in my mind, the more certain I became. There had been 3. I'd seen him vanish. The tape had erased him. I tried to distract myself. I made coffee, scrolled through my phone, anything to shake off the weight pressing against my chest. But the silence in my apartment felt wrong, charged. I swear I could still hear the laughter track humming at the edge of hearing, like a tinnitus of joyless sound. Finally, I gave in. I slid the tape back into the VCR static, the logo, the warped music. And then, the episode, only this time it started differently. There were 2 kids at the clubhouse table, just the blonde boy and the striped shirt girl, no smaller boy, no nervous glance toward the camera, nothing. I hit rewind, fast forward, stop, play. The footage obeyed, but it was all the same. 2 kids, no sign of the third. I sat there, sweating, my stomach sinking deeper with each frame. This wasn't a corrupted tape. This wasn't a glitch. The boy was gone, and the strangest part? The longer I watched, the harder it became to picture him. His features blurred in my memory, softening into a blank shape. Even his voice slipped away. I could still feel the terror he carried, but the details dissolved like ink in water. I grabbed a notebook and pen, desperate to anchor him. I wrote, there were 3 kids. One was smaller. He hid behind a crate, but when I looked back at the page, the words had warped. My handwriting was there, but the sentence had twisted, rearranged itself into nonsense. 2 kids in clubhouse. Laughter. I dropped the pen. My hands shook. It wasn't just erasing him from the tape. It was erasing him from me. The next scene began. The blonde boy and the girl sitting across from each other playing cards again. Their dialogue stumbled forward, the laugh track filling in the gaps. Only now I noticed something worse. Their eyes looked hollow. Not tired, not scared, hollow. Like they'd already forgotten him too. The girl reached for her card pile, and for a second her hand hovered midair, frozen. She blinked, staring at the empty space between them, confusion flickering across her face. She whispered something I could barely make out. Where's... The screen glitched. Her mouth kept moving, but no sound came out. Then the laugh track blasted over everything, suffocating her voice, drowning it in manic, endless noise. When the picture cleared, she was smiling again. The hollow kind of smile stretched too wide. The blonde boy slammed his card on the table. He shouted something like, "That's how you win the game!" His voice cracked on the word game, breaking into a sob. The laugh track cheered anyway. I hit pause. The frozen image filled the screen. 2 kids, one crying through a forced grin, the other sitting too still, her face like a mask. And all I could think was, this is how it happens. One by one they're erased. First from the episode, then from memory, and then finally from existence itself. My phone buzzed. The sound jolted me so hard I nearly fell off the couch. I snatched it up, desperate for something normal, something grounding. A text from my sister. Just 5 words, "Who are you again?" My blood went cold. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, then locked. I unlocked it again, praying I'd misread. The message was still there. I called her immediately. The line rang. She picked up, confused. "Hello?" "Anna, it's me," I said, my voice shaking. Silence. Then, "Sorry, who?" I hung up. My chest felt hollow. My sister had known me all my life, and suddenly she didn't. I turned back to the TV. The tape was still paused on those 2 kids, staring out from their plywood prison. Their smiles looked sharper now, crueler, like they knew. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just erasing them. It was spreading. Watching the tape meant becoming part of the cycle. The boy was gone first. Next would be the girl. Then the blonde boy. And then me. I should have stopped. I should have smashed the tape right then. But something in the static whispered louder than reason. Keep watching. And so I did. When sleep became impossible, I turned to the only place I thought might make sense of it. The internet. It was 3 in the morning, the kind of hour when reality itself feels thinner, when every shadow in the room seems alive. My laptop's glow painted my face ghost white as I searched. Nickelodeon lost episodes, creepy clubhouse show, kids erased from TV, pages of nothing. Wiki entries, fan nostalgia boards, YouTube clips of old shows I actually did remember. For a moment, I almost gave up. Maybe I really was losing my mind, and then halfway down the search results, I saw a link. The site looked wrong. Old HTML, lime green text on a black background like something from 1998 that had never been updated. The title read, "Do you remember the clubhouse?" My pulse kicked. I clicked. The forum was small. Just a list of threads, some with 0 replies, others with cryptic titles. "She's gone now. Don't say their names. The tape found me." I scrolled, my breath shallow, until I found one thread that chilled me to the bone. There were 3. The post was dated 2 years earlier, by a user named Static Child. I swear there used to be 3 kids. A boy, a girl, and another boy. Smaller, nervous. He never spoke much. Nobody else seems to remember him. When I rewatched the tape, he was gone. It's like he was never there at all. I slammed the laptop shut, heart racing, but curiosity clawed at me, stronger than fear. After a long minute, I opened it again. Reply after reply followed. Different usernames, different dates, all echoing the same horror. Empty Laugh wrote, "Yes, he hid behind the crate. I saw him too. Then he wasn't there anymore. Now even my brother says there were only 2. VHS Junkie 88 added, "Don't try to write it down. It won't stay." I carved it into wood, and the words were gone the next day. The erasure doesn't stop with the tape. I scrolled faster, sweating. These people knew. They'd seen the same thing. But what unsettled me most wasn't their confirmation. It was how their posts started to fade. Whole threads riddled with missing chunks, sentences that cut off mid-thought, replies that were nothing but static-like text, sent, as if the forum itself was being consumed. Piece by piece, one thread, newer than the rest, bore my exact fear. It spreads. The original poster described how their memories of family members had begun to flicker, how people they'd known all their lives suddenly didn't recognize them. "It starts with the tape," they wrote. "Then the kids vanish. Then names. Then you." I sat frozen, scrolling past page after page of collective panic. My mouth was dry, my hands clammy. This wasn't my imagination. I wasn't alone, but the deeper I dug, the stranger it got. One user, Echo Host, claimed to have digitized their copy of the tape. They shared a link. It was dead. Replied to their own post, "Doesn't matter. Every time I upload it, the file corrupts. No one can share it. It wants to stay physical." Others begged for copies, swearing they'd seen the show as kids, that they remembered the commercials but couldn't recall any details. Their desperation bled through the text, the way addicts talk about needing one last hit. Finally, at the very bottom of the forum index, I saw a pinned message from the admin. No username, just, watching connects you. The more of us there are, the faster it spreads. Do not speak their names. Do not write them down. You can't save them. You can't even save yourself. The timestamp on that post was yesterday. The cursor blinked in the reply box, daring me to type something, anything, to admit I was there. My fingers hovered over the keys, trembling. I wanted to reach out, to tell them I wasn't crazy, that I'd seen the boy too, that my own sister had already started forgetting me. But before I could write, the screen glitched. The forum blinked to black. When it reloaded, the site was gone. 404 error. Page not found. No history in the cache. No trace in bookmarks. Nothing. It had vanished, just like the boy. I told myself I'd stop. That I'd shove the tape into a drawer, bury it under blankets, pretend none of it ever happened. But the silence in my apartment didn't feel empty anymore. It felt inhabited. Every time I glanced at the TV, even unplugged, I expected static to burst across the screen. I started sleeping on the couch, as if keeping closer to the VCR gave me control. It didn't. One night, the hum began. At first, I thought it was the fridge or the heater kicking in. But no, the sound was too familiar. The tinny hiss of old VHS static muffled through walls. It was coming from the living room, from the television that wasn't even on. I sat up, heart pounding. The screen flickered awake by itself. Black and white snowstorm. My VCR light blinked red as though a tape had been loaded. I hadn't touched it. My throat tightened. I should have run, but instead, I reached for the remote, my hands trembling. The snow on the screen steadied, cleared, and there they were. The two kids sitting in their plywood clubhouse. Blank eyes, frozen smiles. The girl's hand waved slowly, stiff like a puppet's. The boy leaned toward the camera, and then he spoke. "Do you remember us?" His voice was small, warped by static. But the question hit me like a knife. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My tongue felt nailed to the roof of my mouth. The girl tilted her head, her smile twitching. "He doesn't," she whispered. "He's forgetting already." I stumbled forward, shaking my head violently. "No, I remember. There was a third kid, the small boy. I saw him. I wrote it down." The boy's face darkened. His smile collapsed into a hollow stare. "Don't write it down. Writing doesn't work." My knees buckled. "What do you want from me?" Static filled the room, louder than any laugh track. Through it, the girl's voice cut like glass. "Say his name." The words slithered through me. The forgotten boy's name, yes, that was the key. That was what they wanted, but my mind was blank. Every time I reached for the memory, it slipped away, leaving only the shape of absence. The ache of something I should have known, but couldn't. I can't," I whispered. Their eyes widened in unison. The boy leaned closer, so close his blurred face nearly pressed through the screen. "Then you'll be next," the static shrieked. My living room lights flickered, plunging me into darkness except for the TV's glow. The kids pressed against the glass now, their features warping, stretching, and then, behind them, the smaller boy. He was there again, half hidden in shadow, trembling the way I'd first seen him. Only this time he wasn't blurred. He was sharp, painfully sharp, his terrified eyes fixed on me. He pressed his tiny hand against the clubhouse wall. Slowly he turned his head. His mouth moved, forming a word I couldn't hear. I leaned in, straining to catch it. My heart hammered against my ribs, and then I understood. He wasn't speaking to me. He was mouthing something else. "Help me!" The girl whipped around, her face twisted into something monstrous, her jaw stretching too far. She shrieked, a sound not meant for human throats. The boy beside her joined in, their bodies jerking like marionettes on snapping strings. The static roared, and the smaller boy vanished again. Gone. The screen went black. I collapsed onto the floor, gasping, my ears ringing. My apartment was silent again, the VCR light dead, but I couldn't unsee his face. For the first time since this began, I remembered something new. The boy didn't look like a character. He looked real. Like a real child shoved into a set, surrounded by plywood and lights, forced to play a part until the tape decided to consume him. And if he was real, if he'd reached out to me, that meant there was still something left of him to save. Or maybe something left of him to drag me under. I didn't load the tape, at least I don't remember doing it. One moment I was clutching it in my hands, staring at the plastic shell like it was a bomb. The next, the VCR clicked, whirred, and the screen glowed. No logo, no music. Just a title card, crude white text on black, Episode 0, Do Not Broadcast. My stomach twisted. The image cut in without warning. Not the usual clubhouse, not plywood sets and fake props. This was a bare studio lit by a single overhead lamp. The floor was concrete. The walls disappeared into darkness, and in the center, 3 chairs, occupied. The kids sat side by side, their small frames dwarfed by the cavernous space. The girl's hair hung limp, her striped shirt filthy. The blond boy stared at the floor, silent tears streaking his cheeks. And the third, the forgotten boy. He was there, real as the breath catching in my throat. His knees pulled to his chest, his hands clutching the chair's arms so tightly his knuckles bled. His eyes darted to the camera, wide with desperate awareness. "You're still watching?" the girl whispered. Her voice was raw, stripped of the rehearsed cheer she'd once worn. "You shouldn't be watching." The boy beside her raised his head. His eyes were wrong, completely black now, swallowing the light. "But you are, and now it's too late." The laugh track erupted, hideously loud, echoing off the concrete walls until it sounded like screaming. The kids didn't laugh this time. They sat, trembling, staring at me through the lens like I'd just joined them. The camera lurched forward, zooming in until I could see every tear, every twitch of their mouths, and then the screen flickered. Suddenly, I wasn't seeing the kids anymore. I was seeing my own living room. The grainy VHS feed showed me, sitting on the couch, pale and shaking in the blue glow of the TV. I staggered backward. On screen, my shadow did the same, delayed by half a second. The girl's voice bled through the speakers. "We see you. You're part of the episode now." The frame jolted, cutting back to the studio. The kids were gone. The 3 chairs sat empty, stains smeared across the seats. Footsteps echoed. The camera panned, and in the corner of the studio, I saw it. A door. Heavy metal unmarked. The camera moved closer on its own, the sound of dragging chains underscoring every step. My chest seized with dread. I knew what was behind that door. The camera pushed through. Darkness. Then shapes. Stacks of old film reels. Shelves of cracked tapes, all labeled with shows I half remembered from childhood. Some I knew had aired. Others never had. And in the shadows between the shelves, figures huddled. Small, child-sized, their faces blurred, features erased like smudged pencil marks. They twitched when the camera passed. Some reached forward, fingers outstretched, silently begging. Others turned away, their bodies jerking unnaturally, as if replaying loops of movement. My stomach lurched. These weren't characters. These were the lost. Kids who'd been swallowed whole by whatever this show really was. And at the end of the aisle, the camera stopped. The forgotten boy stood there, but he wasn't trembling anymore. He was smiling, not the brittle, forced smile of the laugh track, not the hollow mask I'd seen before. This was worse. His teeth looked too sharp, his mouth stretching wider than it should. "You're almost here," he whispered. His voice didn't come from the TV, it came from behind me. I spun. Empty room. Only shadows and the flicker of the screen. On the tape, the boy raised a hand. "It wants you. It always wanted you. You kept watching." The laugh track detonated again, deafening. My ears rang, my eyes watered. When the sound finally cut, the boy was gone. The camera fell. Crashed to the floor, tilted sideways. For a moment, all I could see was the edge of a chair leg. Then slowly, figures stepped into view. Tall this time. Not children, adults. Their faces were blurred, their skin as gray as ash. Their movements jerky, like stop motion. They gathered around the fallen camera, peering down, until all I could see were blank ovals, where eyes and mouths should have been. One leaned closer, filling the screen. Its featureless head tilted, and then faintly, like a whisper leaking through a wall, "Your turn." The tape screeched, the image buckling into lines of static. My television rattled, the screen swelling with blinding light. I shielded my face, heart hammering, convinced it would burst and shower me with glass. But instead, black. Silence. The VCR clicked. The tape spit itself out, sliding halfway free, as though it had finished with me. My apartment was dark again. I stood there, shaking, staring at the half-ejected cassette. My reflection looked warped in its plastic window. I should have destroyed it. Burned it, smashed it, anything. But my body didn't move. I just stared. Because part of me couldn't shake the feeling that the episode hadn't ended at all. That it was still running. Only now, I was inside it. The next morning, I woke to silence. Not the kind that comes with peace, but the kind that feels hollowed out. My phone was full of missed calls, but none of them had names attached. Just unknown number, dozens of them. My contacts list, gone. Every name replaced with blanks, as though no one I'd ever known had existed at all. I tried calling my sister again, desperate for something familiar. The line rang once before cutting to a mechanical voice. "This number is not in service." I checked social media. My account was still there, but empty. My posts erased, my friends list stripped bare. It was like I'd never been online in the first place. Panic clawed up my throat. I opened the drawer where I kept old photos, yearbooks, letters, all blank. Pages bleached white, faces scrubbed clean. Even the paper smelled wrong, like mildew and static. I ran to the bathroom mirror. For one sickening moment, I thought I wouldn't see myself. But I did, only different. My outline fuzzed at the edges, blurred like VHS tape paused too long. I pressed my hand to the glass. It didn't quite line up. The worst part wasn't the evidence around me. It was how quickly my own mind started betraying me. Names slipped first, then birthdays, then entire memories. When I tried to recall my parents' faces, I saw only the blank ovals from the tape, and the more I tried to fight it, the faster it spread. That afternoon, a knock rattled my door. Relief surged through me. Human contact, someone who could ground me. I threw it open. A delivery man stood there holding a package. His eyes skimmed over me without recognition. Sorry, he muttered, frowning. Thought someone lived here? He turned to leave. I grabbed his arm. I do live here. You can see me, right? My name is... The word caught in my throat. My own name, gone. Not just forgotten, but erased, scrubbed clean before I could speak it. The man jerked away, pale with confusion. I don't think you're supposed to be here, he whispered, before hurrying down the hall. The package he'd left behind sat heavy in my hands. No label, no address, just my VCR tape, inside a plain cardboard box waiting to be played again. I dropped it like it burned. For hours, I sat against the wall staring at the tape on the floor. It didn't matter if I destroyed it now. The damage was already done, because the truth was inescapable. The world hadn't just forgotten the boy. It was forgetting me, too. I don't know how much longer I have. The erasure comes in waves now. Names, faces, even streets I used to walk every day vanish the moment I try to picture them. I can feel pieces of me slipping, too. Some mornings I wake up and struggle to remember what I liked, what I feared, what I was for. I think that's the point. The tape doesn't just consume the children trapped inside it. It consumes whoever watches, whoever remembers, until all that's left is a hollow frame, smiling for a laugh track that never ends. I swore I wouldn't play it again. And yet every night the static hums through the apartment, pulling me closer. The tape is patient. It knows I'll give in. Maybe that's why I'm recording this. So when I finally vanish, there's proof I was here at all. Proof that I remembered, even if just for a little while. And maybe you remember too. Because if you've made it this far, listening to me, picturing the boy behind the crate, the way he looked at the camera, then it's already begun for you. You've seen him now. You've thought about him. You've kept him alive. That's how it spreads. They said not to speak their names, not to write them down. But you don't need names. You only need the memory, and memory is enough to feed it. So if you start forgetting, your friends, your family, even yourself, don't be surprised. Don't say I didn't warn you, because the cycle doesn't end with me. It never ends.